Okay, today I'm going to be outlining for you some ways to improve insulin sensitivity. This question comes from one of our app members. And if you'd like to join as a remote coaching client, you can visit direct.me/reshape and select the Become a Client option. And that allows you to get on a remote coaching program for as little as $1 a day, in addition to a guided workout, meal planning, coaching feedback, group support, and so much more. There's lots of other perks and benefits, including exclusive discounts for our app members. So, in order to accurately explain insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance, let me just start by discussing what insulin is and what it does. So, insulin is not the boogeyman that it's made out to be. Insulin is a vital hormone. We need insulin. Without insulin, we would die. As a matter of fact, I've got a guest scheduled for a full-length podcast coming up in the near future. One of my clients, Jessica, who is a type 1 diabetic, she would be the first to tell you if she doesn't take her insulin injection, that's going to cause a lot of problems. So insulin is basically a transport hormone, and its main job is to shuttle nutrients into the cells so that they can be processed for energy, or in the case of protein, as rebuilding material. So not only does insulin transport glucose, sugar, or carbohydrate, it also transports amino acids. And for that reason, it's vital for the muscle building or muscle preservation process, as well as energy production. The problem with the standard American diet, or let me just say that the underlying cause of most of the metabolic health conditions that we're experiencing in this country, the root cause of obesity, type 2 diabetes, as I mentioned, PCOS, and a host of other problems, is something known as hyperinsulinemia. That just means chronically elevated insulin levels. So insulin's not the bad guy. We need it. But if insulin levels are always high, that sets us up for some problems. And what happens is, over time, insulin resistance can develop. So when the muscle cells are sensitive to insulin, when you eat carbohydrate, it goes straight into the muscle cells. That way it can be used as energy or stored in the form of glycogen for use as energy in the future. When the cells are constantly bombarded with lots and lots of glucose over a long period of time, they lose their sensitivity and they become insulin resistant, so that they will no longer accept glucose into the muscle cells. At that point, it stays in the bloodstream, and glucose in the bloodstream is toxic, especially in high amounts, so it starts having lots of bad effects on the body. And that's the root cause of type 2 diabetes as well. So going back to what I was saying earlier, the difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, in type 1, the pancreas does not produce insulin. In type 2 diabetes, the pancreas is producing insulin, but the muscle cells are not sensitive to the signal of insulin, so they don't accept the glucose into the cells. And at that point, the blood sugar continues to rise until it can be classified as a chronic condition. So we know that that is treatable and even reversible and preventable for sure with proper diet and training protocol, like the one I mentioned earlier. So it's not some big mystery to me. To the general public, it may still seem somewhat mysterious, but we haven't suddenly developed a disease as a society. This is basically the effect of our environment, and in particular, our food environment. The activity does have a huge role to play in this. I don't want to downplay that, but it's mostly the nutrition. And the main reason for that is our dietary guidelines in this country that have been going on for decades now indicate that we should be eating lots and lots of grains. Grains like wheat, corn, rice, oats, etc., are basically just a source of carbohydrate or glucose, which can be a valuable form of energy if you're active enough to use that energy, if you have enough storage space in the muscle or the liver for the incoming glucose, and if your cells are sensitive enough to use it. So those are the conditions. If you find yourself in a place where you're having problems metabolizing glucose. If those insulin spikes and blood sugar crashes cause appetite dysregulation, they cause you to be hungry all the time and irritable, getting off of that roller coaster is another big benefit to what I'm going to discuss with you today, which are some ways that you can modify your lifestyle to improve your insulin sensitivity. So the first thing that you can do is some weight training. When you do resistance training or strength training, first of all, that activity requires glucose in order to perform. We can burn fat for fuel, and as a matter of fact, fat is our default fuel source for our low-level activities. Just sitting here talking right now, I'm burning mostly fat for fuel. Your body wants to conserve the glucose or the carbohydrate or the glycogen specifically for times of emergency need for high output demanding energy activities. So when you do strength training, that requires carbohydrate or glucose to power that activity. So that's going to use up some of the stored glucose in the muscle or in the bloodstream if it's circulating in the bloodstream. You may have heard that carbohydrate is our preferred fuel or that glucose is our preferred fuel. It's not really the case. What happens is the body prioritizes the burning of glucose over burning fat because it is toxic. So your body is trying to rid itself of excess glucose whenever possible. So for certain activities, though, you have to have glucose. Now, that glucose could come from the conversion of protein. Your body can actually convert protein into glucose for those high output demands. So you don't really have to eat any carbohydrate in order to have the energy. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should completely abstain from carbohydrates, but reducing them is a big part of getting this whole thing in check. So when you do the weight training, that's going to use up glucose that's circulating. That's also going to help you to build more lean muscle tissue so that you have increased your storage space. The more muscle you have, the more space you have for incoming glucose. Next thing you can do, as I alluded to a little bit there, was to reduce your overall carbohydrate load, either the total amount or the frequency of carbohydrate. Either of those scenarios works. So the type of nutrition protocol that I follow is based on lots of different principles, but one of the main ones is something known as a cyclical ketogenic diet. And what that means is a very low carbohydrate diet majority of the time with one or two high carbohydrate meals on the weekends just to refill the glycogen. Ketogenic diet or a very low carbohydrate diet, in the short term, that improves insulin sensitivity. When you reduce the overall carbohydrate load coming in, that's going to improve your ability to uptake glucose into the muscle cells. If you continue on a strict ketogenic or very low carbohydrate diet approach for a long period of time, the cells actually become resistant again because your body is seeking to divert all of the incoming glucose towards brain function. We don't want that to happen. We don't want the muscle cells to be resistant to glucose. We want them to be sensitive so that one of the outcomes of this program is metabolic flexibility, which is the ability to burn glucose when it's available or to be able to burn fat as fuel when glucose is not available. If you're overweight or obese, you have excess body fat, that's lots of stored energy on your body. But if you feel tired, it's because you don't have the ability to access that energy. So this whole process is what I call becoming fat adapted, is based on my fast track program, fat adapted strength training. Those are the main components. And reducing carbohydrate will help you in that regard. So if you had to eliminate an entire category of foods, that would be grains, as I mentioned earlier. If you want to just limit that to getting rid of processed grains or most of the time avoiding most of the grains, anything in that direction will be a step towards improving your ability to metabolize glucose. Another thing you can do is intermittent fasting. So if you stop eating at a certain time, let's say you're going to fast for 8 hours every night while you're asleep anyway. If you stop eating a couple hours before bed and you put off your first meal of the day a couple hours after you wake up, that's a 12-hour fast. That's kind of a baseline. Really, everyone should be doing 8 to 12 hour fast every single day. Most people are at least fasting 8 hours while they're asleep. Hopefully, they're not waking up in the middle of the night to eat, but that could happen. Prolonging that an additional 4 or 8 hours for a total of up to 20 to even 24 hours is known as an intermittent fast. That uses up most of the glycogen stored in your liver, and you can actually even enter a mild state of ketosis after about 18 hours of not consuming carbohydrate, especially if you're doing some high energy demanding output activities like running, sprinting, weightlifting, that sort of thing, that will deplete the glycogen stored in the liver. That's the signal for your body to start producing ketones, which are alternate energy molecules to power your brain and body when there's no glucose around. And that is a step in the right direction towards being able to metabolize body fat for fuel. So last but not least, you can do some supplements. Now, today's video is sponsored by our friends over at Designs for Health. So if you click on the link in the bio or the comments or wherever you're watching or listening to this, there's a 25% discount for you on any of the products that they carry. Some key ingredients on glucose disposal agents like berberine, cinnamon, alpha lipoic acid, that sort of thing, those help your body to rid itself of glucose by diverting it or by increasing muscle sensitivity, insulin sensitivity. So the glucose goes into the muscle. Another one is fish oil, omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil. Those are one of the best insulin sensitizing agents there are. So combine a couple of those products, you've got a really solid protocol. If you need other recommendations on supplements, by the way, there is a link at direct.me/reshape. You can schedule a consultation. I'll be happy to sit down with you by remote video chat and get to the root of your health challenges once and for all. If you want to do some metabolic testing through Designs for Health, I do have discounts on the supplements. Like I said, 25% off. I can't discount the test, but that reveals your exact need, what protocol would best benefit you. And we do a follow-up test to measure the impact of that. So something to think about. The consultation fee is included in the test. And again, 25% discount on any supplements. If you don't want to do testing or consultation or any of that, you can still purchase supplements through Designs for Health, but use my link so you can do the discount code, save yourself some money on that. That's all for today. I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. And if you do have questions, be sure to put those in the comments below and I'll cover that on an upcoming episode. And until next time, stay strong and enjoy the journey.